On August 8th, 2014, a struggling game developer named Scott Cawthon took on criticisms of his good video games. Criticisms that ranged from, "This game plays like ass, I'd rather not play a game at all and just sit in a dark room and wait for some big metal monster to come and kill me," and "Holy hell, these guys are ugly, they look like Charles Entertainment cheese, except way freakier." And with that criticism, he went on to create Five Nights at Freddy's, a game where you sit in a dark room and wait for some fuckered monster to come and kill you and ram an endoskeleton up your. On the release of Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie with Shaggy and also Peter Mellark in it, I figured now was probably as good a time as any to take a look back at the FNAF games, discuss their success, the burnout of the audience, and the absolutely obscene amount of content released throughout the series over the course of 9 years, and try to make a storyline of the game that makes as much sense as possible and doesn't take an hour. We'll cross the story bridge later on, but the story of Five Nights at Freddy's actually goes really deep and it's hard to put a finger on throughout, especially when I kind of fell off the train of the story after the 6th game. I guess we'll try and get into that later on. So, as mentioned earlier, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 released on August 8th, 2014. Scott Cawthon was a one-man show and had released games that hadn't really made being a proper game developer seem like a very prosperous career, until he decided to lean into the criticisms of his games and released Five Nights at Freddy's, leaning into a complaint that his characters looked uncanny and not too dissimilar to the animatronics at American children's restaurants instead of cutesy little guys like you'd see in any game. Yeah, I was never actually at a place with any of these guys. They don't tend to have them in Connacht in Ireland, but I can tell you now, I'd prefer not to spend 5 nights, but I did, in the passenger seat. Yeah, this game blew up big time on YouTube. Corey Kenshin, PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, even KSI was on it for a bit, Dawko, Game Theory, and most notably Markiplier all had massive hits on their hands when they picked up the series, and the game's popularity continued to skyrocket, so much so that now I own it. I don't own any horror games. The gameplay, while seemingly nothing special, benefited from its simplicity. By making it impossible for the player to move, you made the player immediately feel powerless and more wary of what was hiding in the shadows just outside their door. As well as this, by giving players a specific level of power to work with, you also lifted the paranoia and created an actual gameplay element out of this seemingly minimalist style of gameplay, making people resource manage while also trying to manage the resources inside their intestines. Oh god damn it! The series was such a success that a mere 3 months later, Scott released a sequel, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This game was developed to immediately capitalize on the success of the first game, bringing back the older animatronics that people had become strangely attached to, while also reimagining them to be not that scary. The one thing that was pivotal in the first game was the doors, and they were the only level of guaranteed safety that you would tend to have from what was outside. However, in this game, look down that corridor there, just pure pitch black darkness. Just keep staring at that there like a good lad. Also, you've got some vents at the side, which some dumbass child is going to crawl in, nick your batteries, and then just laugh at you. Like as though it wouldn't be extremely possible for your character to just get up off his chair and hit the child with a V trigger. This game also has an infestation of these mechanical boys, with at least 10 animatronics in the place. The original 4 toy versions, the puppet, Balloon Boy. There's also Golden Freddy, even though he was like a weirdo in the first game and he was just kind of a little outside thing that the lore picked up on a lot. This game also happened to be a massive success. What a surprise! So within 4 months, Scott had released another game, Five Nights at Freddy's 3.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to Five Nights at Freddy's 3. This might be the most hyped game in the history of gaming.
In my opinion, this is the worst game in the series. Again, with such a quick turnaround, there wasn't really a whole lot done to change up this very simple formula, and for now, that wasn't really a problem, because sit and survive horror games were still a fairly new concept, with most only becoming familiar with them around now, 7 months after the release of the original. In this game, rather than being in a children's restaurant with a bunch of lifeless animatronics coming after you, there's only one guy, and it's not even just an animatronic. No, there's a dude in there. He's there. Hey man, how are you? Oh god, I don't like him. This guy's going to be important later. However, it is worth mentioning that the overall aesthetic of the game is elite, even though the gameplay itself sucks ass. Springtrap's design is really good, and genuinely is a strong contender for one of the best designed characters in horror games. He's instantly iconic to look at, as well as being freaky when you see little parts of his body and blood inside the suit, all while this very piss-stained bunny just stares at you. Like, he is really freaky. However, this game struggles due to the fact that once you get over the premise, it's not actually a scary game. The jump scares in this game aren't really jump scares. It's more Springtrap just walks into your room and is like, well man, do you have games on your phone? To which he immediately kills you and takes your phone. There's other jump scares that might actually get you, which are the ones that come from the phantom animatronics, which tend to just be from looking at the cameras for too long. But if you just keep moving around the cameras and don't look at anything other than Springtrap, then yeah, you're probably going to be fine. The game is really slow, and coming off the back of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, where you had to try and balance 50 different things at the same time, making a genuine, really hard to 100% game, FNAF 3 you can just lure one guy around the same thing over and over and over again, and fix your ventilation enough so you're not breathing through a tailpipe, and yeah, it's not exactly the most innovative game ever made. However, despite dropping an entire horror trilogy within less than a year, FNAF 3 also sold very well. So within 4 months, we got Five Nights at Freddy's 4 on July 23rd. I actually don't think it fully sets in that 4 games came out within a year. This game was initially being built up as the final one in the series, with cryptic posts to Scott's website promoting a quote, final chapter and a Halloween release date. However, Scott, much like the animatronics, got a little quirky one night and released the game on July 23rd. This game, in my opinion, is the scariest one in the franchise, but it's also incredibly janky and is very inaccessible for people who don't like horror games. Rather than being a security guard in this game, you're a child in their bedroom with the most horrifying interpretations of the animatronics in the history of the games, making their way down your hallways, into your closet, or onto your bed. Not like that. This game personally plays to my fears really well, as so much of the game is removed from your vision. In order to play this game and beat it, you actually have to essentially close the door and listen for breathing outside of it. So in order to actually beat the game, you need to play with headphones, with the volume very high up. Like, if in the event you do get scared, it's not so much the scare that gets you, rather than the fact that you have been immediately deafened at 3 in the morning. This game doesn't give you half the security that the others did. In the first 3 games, it feels like a job because, well, it is. It feels like you have some degree of power to warding off the animatronics, be it your doors, your flashlight, the Freddy mask, sound effects, locking the vents, whatever. But this game, it feels like you're just desperately trying to survive. It fully embraces horror, probably better than any of the games outside of the first one really did. This remains the scariest game in the franchise, taking these freaky boys and plopping them in what is normally a fairly well-regarded and safe environment, plays tricks with your brain, and personally it really feels off, especially like late at night if you've been playing this game and you go to leave your room. It's not, There's also weird little moments that pop up in the game and further prey on your fears, with the fun with plush trap minigame being not nice or enjoyable too, when you can't see anything and just have to listen for him. All in all, I hate this game, but it is pretty good, and at the same time, definitely my favorite FNAF game to watch people play, but probably my least favorite to play because I don't know what I'm doing and I don't like being scared. After this, Scott took something of a hiatus from the Five Nights at Freddy's games, trying to go back into his development roots and making a point-and-click RPG game to use the FNAF name and get Scott back to making games like the old days. This game was FNAF World, and I don't own it, haven't played it, didn't watch anyone else play it, and it didn't reach the same levels of success that the Five Nights at Freddy's games that came before or after did. So we're gonna move on and act like it didn't happen, much like Scott himself probably does. Five Nights at Freddy's 5, or Sister Location, appeared on Steam on October 7th, 2016, over a year after the release of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, so yeah, he'd actually managed to get a bit of restraint. Good lad, Scott. Go back to the alt-right pipeline. Good boy. Yeah, despite Scott saying that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was the final chapter in the Five Nights at Freddy's games and story, he went back to the well with Sister Location. Sister Location, however, as the name would somewhat imply, was different to the games that had preceded it. Sister Location was a very narrative-heavy game, still keeping the point-and-click formula, but also having the player be able to fully move around the environment rather than the previous limits of turning from one side of the room to the other and running from one door to the other. The animatronics in this game aren't that scary, except for the last one called Ennard, which, look at him. Ugh. He's just like a little amalgamation of all the other animatronics just cobbled together with tape and a prayer. There's also really cool freaky segments in this game, like being in one of the suits and having to keep undoing spring locks so the suit doesn't close in and clamp you and turn you into a kebab. Overall, is Sister Location a good game? Yeah, it's pretty good. Revitalized the series, finally showed that Scott was willing to leave just a simple point and click game behind, and also teased the return of Springtrap at the end, which I don't know, but for me that's pretty cool now that Scott seems to be putting more money into these games. Surprise guys, Scott put on his website that his next game was being delayed while writing a new book in the FNAF series, and oh feck it, I haven't even touched on the books yet. Yeah, so FNAF got its own book series that now has this fucking many entries. I don't even know, man. I've never read any of them. I'm just a gamer. There's no Subway Surfers gameplay for the book where MatPat gets impregnated by Springtrap. I don't know. On December 4th, 2017, Scott dropped a new game called Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator on Steam as a nice little funny joke and haha, little Christmas present for you guys. Scott had been teasing a Pizza Tycoon game for a while, and then when booting up the game and you're greeted with this, it sure seems to be that way, and then
begin tape. Leaving dead space. 3, 2, 1.
So, in the least shocking surprise of all time, this was actually Five Nights at Freddy's 6, a Pizza Tycoon game where you build your own Freddy's location and then any animatronics you bring in at the end of your night shift that you just find on the street are just let loose and trying to kill you while you try to print out flyers and send emails at 4 a.m. As we all know, normal human procedure. From a gameplay perspective, I actually both love and hate this game. I think removing the 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. formula in favor of completing tasks is in fact a good move, changing up the formula but also putting more control into the hands of the players. Overall, I don't think that's a bad change at all. Your computer makes sound which can attract animatronics, every task makes a noise, and you're in the most clammy, warm room of all time, so you required the use of a loud-ass fan to try and stay cool and, you know, not die. The problem with this, however, is if you turn the fan off, the heat in the room will end up getting too high to the point where your character will die from heat stroke, much like an Irish person in weather above 20 degrees Celsius. My problem with this gameplay lies in trying to prevent the animatronics. You have the motion detectors and the sound effects to try and lure the animatronics away, but it's too hard and obtuse to use in my opinion. Maybe I just suck at games, but I don't know. Also, if you feel like they're right down in the vents, you can turn and just stare into them. Was it too much for me to get a torch? Maybe. Again, maybe I suck at games and I'm just a big puss. But like, I don't know, I don't find it particularly engaging to have to stare blankly into a dark vent and hope that something doesn't jump out and leap at me. Is this a genuine gameplay problem or am I just a little bitch? I couldn't tell you. I do suck at games, so that's probably the main reason, but I don't know. As an overall package, Five Nights at Freddy's 6 is a pretty solid game, and getting it for free, it just helps to sweeten the deal that little bit more. To rank the games as games, I'll say this. In dead last, FNAF 3, easily. Like, it gets absolutely dog-walked by every other game in the series. Then I'd have 6, 5, 4, 1, and 2 is my personal favorite. It is probably the least scary, but from a pure gameplay perspective, I've definitely played FNAF 2 the most. It's the easiest to just jump back into because it always feels like a grind and a challenge to try and beat 1020 mode, while still being beatable, but not I'm going to smash my keyboard into my face levels of difficulty. FNAF 6 was designed to be the conclusion of the games, especially from a lore perspective. However, I suppose I've got to talk about these two games because eventually Scott's wallet got a bit hungry. By the way, I am leaving Ultimate Custom Night out of this retrospective. It's a Night 7 sim, it's a good game, but I'm just going to leave it out of this because I'm not good enough to fully experience the game. I'll touch on it in the lore, but it's not for me. Sorry guys. Scott posted another teaser for a new game on his website, this time showing off a mall-like setting and this massive open area with Freddy's stuff everywhere. It looked very visually impressive. On September 16th, 2020, while I was watching the PlayStation 5 showcase with my friend Marty Sworbs, a teaser trailer for the game was launched showing new animatronics and a new gameplay style for a FNAF entry with an explorable environment, seeming to build more so on Sister Location's gameplay than any of the series' predecessors. The game was announced as an initial PlayStation exclusive, and on November 17th, 2020, Scott made an announcement saying that due to the game being bigger than he had expected and due to development taking place during the COVID-19 pandemic, the game was being delayed from a Christmas release until around 2021. Initially slated for an early 2021 release, the game got delayed multiple more times before officially being released on December 16th, 2021. And even after taking all that time, it was still a buggy, incomplete mess. Don't get me wrong, it's a FNAF game, it was successful, did the usual FNAF thing, sold a load of copies, took over social media for a bit, and also created new furries, but that's kind of par for the course with this franchise. The most memorable part of this game to me is actually watching the gamers that played the first few games in this franchise go back and play this one and struggle to comprehend how buggy the game is, most notably Markiplier and my boy Jack. Neither of these two guys like this game. In my opinion, it's fairly obvious that you can tell. Or at least they don't think it's a good game, but they get enjoyment out of just how much of a buggy mess it is.
We're gonna go down to parts and surfaces, and I'm gonna shove a beak inside of you, and you are going to be able to talk better. Did you hate the idea that much?
Yeah, so like I have a taste for blood now that I feel like will never be satiated, ever. He didn't like that.
The game was still mostly praised, however, but due to the messy gameplay and the bugs and the glitches and whatnot, I've never actually decided to play the game. I don't own it, and I'm not going to until I see it on a fairly decent sale. Then, later this year, in 2023, Ruin was released as a DLC, which to me somehow seems to fuck up the lore even more, but again, the lore doesn't matter in this segment, and I'm not going to really dwell on Sister Location lore because it's a mess. I mean, it makes the kid you played as in Security Breach a murderer, I guess. I don't know. I'm only kind of touching on these games due to the fact that they're the most recent additions to the series. I'm not that arsed about actually talking about them in terms of lore, and they're definitely not going to be the main stories adapted for the movies. So, to all Security Breach enjoyers, thanks for watching, bye. Now, the Five Nights at Freddy's lore is a tricky task to try and take on. For one, when trying to nail down a timeline for this franchise, I checked the FNAF wiki to see what they said, and this is the list. That there are this many timelines that are at least to some degree accepted by the fandom. So what I've instead done for my own lore recap is look through the games and their events, additional canon moments, and use the help of some timelines to try my best to form a timeline that I personally think makes sense. If you disagree with my timeline, cope. I don't care. I made the video. It's my video. It's on my channel. It's taken a long time to write. Shut up. Go home. Touch grass. Internet insults. The story generally always seems to begin in the 1970s with the launch of Fredbear's Family Diner, the first Freddy-esque location. The year on this place is never quite nailed down. A lot of people seem to think it's 1973, some go later into the 70s, but in my opinion this doesn't really matter that much. This is a location in the games that's never explored or entered by the players, or at least it hasn't been yet. However, it is absolutely pivotal to the lore, with the owners and the founders of the diner being named Henry, Emily, and William Afton, co-owners that built the new animatronic suits and funded the business. William was the lead engineer behind the development of what was called the, quote, spring lock suits that could both double up as both animatronics on a stage and costumes that could be worn by the performers, with Henry and William themselves donning the suits for performances to help keep the illusion of the animatronics being alive alive for the children. Henry would wear the golden Fredbear suit, while William would wear what would go on to become his iconic yellow spring Bonnie suit. This location was a major success, leading to the two having a cartoon series being developed named Fredbear and Friends, which is seen like once on an 8-bit TV in FNAF 4. I just thought this was crazy that this was actually written in like a lot of timelines. This seems like such a throwaway thing. Due to the success of the series, they were then able to expand the business more and create another new location. This one being called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Ha ha ha. Hello, hello, hello. Am I right, guys? This location had brand new animatronic characters named, guess it and say it with me, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy. Freddy Fazbear. And as a result, we got Fazbear Entertainment. Incoming Faz-related jokes from the entire franchise.
A Faz wrench.
Oh, Faz,
Just like
yeah.
my dad's.
Just like my dad's Faz wrench right before he Faz drinks and Faz beats the shit out of my mom.
Around this time, William sought to make more profit and create more animatronics because he's a capitalist, and he founded a sister location. Do you see what I did there? Named Circus Baby's Pizza World. This pizzeria was home to, as you'd guess, Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora, and a little baby Bonnie guy, this little Bonnie guy, and he's there. Now around here is where I run into my first issues in relation to the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. This is where some children, namely William's own children, die as a result of William's own creations. However, I can't decide which child dies first. According to FNAFinsider.com, Elizabeth dies first, but to me it only seems to make sense if Aftons' youngest of the three, who's only really known as the crying child, so I'm going to call him Dedoid for convenience, is the first to die. To summarize why this confuses me, the animatronics at Circus Baby's Pizza World, most notably Baby herself, are designed to kill and trap children. And my general belief is that this is because William is trying to experiment with the souls of dead children, which only makes sense in the event that Dedoid dies first and possesses Fredbear, which he goes on to do. However, that doesn't explain why Dedoid is so afraid of the animatronics before his death in the event that his sister is still alive. So maybe it's just me trying to find a motive for William, but I don't know. It confuses me, guys. Hey everyone, post-scripting Connor here. I'm having to rewrite like all the rest of the script from here down, because as it turns out, Scott actually just confirmed why the nightmare animatronics in FNAF 4 exist in the first place on Twitter, on his burner account. So now I've got to retroactively re-record this section of the video after I've rewritten it and explain why I now hate my life and this dumb franchise. I've been working on this video since around August. So the original understanding of the nightmare animatronics was that they were nightmares in the dying brain of little boy Dedoid over here, right? But now it actually turns out that William is actually even more clinically insane than he already was, and he didn't even need a motive like I was searching for, and he's actually just been gassing his own son so that he has hallucinations of these nightmarish guys. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for making that clear and obvious. He actually did make it fairly clear and obvious. It was just in the it's like in the background of a lot of stuff, but like it wasn't apparent to me. So fuck you, Scott. Anyway, so Elizabeth, William's daughter, is infatuated with Baby because look at her. Why wouldn't you be? However, she obviously doesn't know that she's actually a killing machine, and once a child is left unattended in the room with the animatronic, Baby's protocol is to open up her chest cavity and pull the child in and just like... William's motive is unclear as to why he built these, but the likely option is that he had spent around a decade at this point running a children's pizzeria and was probably going insane due to the prolonged exposure to children in a hospitality sector. Anyway, Elizabeth, despite William warning her otherwise, gets too close to Baby, gets chronically uber murdered, and Circus Baby's Pizza World as a pizzeria is forced to close down and go underground. Do you see what I did there? From here, William starts gassing his little boy Dedoid, and not in an encouraging way. D-Doid's older brother Michael continues to torment him with Master of the Animatronics. Meanwhile, William has learned that Elizabeth is possessing Circus Baby and becomes intrigued with the idea of children inhabiting his creations. The reason for this is going to take a long time, but it's because of this thing called Remnant, which, to put in simple terms, is just cursive binding from Minecraft, but the child has cursive binding, so once the inside metal of the animatronic puts on the child, they get cursive. This hasn't really worked for me. William from here starts luring children into the back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, dressed in his old Spring Bonnie outfit from Fredbear's. Here we get the missing children's incident. Woohoo! William murders at least 5 children and hides their bodies inside the suits of the animatronics, and including Fredbear. Why am I making this like it's a joke? Seeing as children were disappearing like my energy 30 minutes into a social situation, Henry Emily built a new animatronic at Freddy's called the Circus Puppet, or the Security Puppet, sorry. The purpose of this was strictly to protect his daughter Charlie. However, it ended up not being worth much, as some kids played a prank on Charlie and trapped her outside the puppet's reach, just outside the front door of the pizzeria. Why? Because children are dickheads. William then committed a drive-by on a literal child, because obviously I'm not defending the man, I haven't been at all, but I've been trying to find a motive or just any rational excuse, and I'm sorry, I can't find one. I don't study criminology, I just study Irish history, okay? The puppet would eventually make its way outside, being broken down by the rain, and would eventually reach Charlie's body, allowing her soul to possess the puppet. So we check back in with little boy D-Doid. So D-Doid had been running after Fredbear's before William started gassing him, so now that he was being constantly watched by William from the offices, as seen in the sister location secret ending, D-Doid's fear of the animatronics was now absolute, but his birthday party was still down to take place at Fredbear's. Why was it still happening there? William owns the place, and he clearly doesn't want his son to go there for fear that his son also dies. But why you own the place? It's not like you can't cancel. You own the location. I don't know, man. This guy is written as both the biggest idiot in the world, yet he somehow manages to get away with 13 murders for decades. During his birthday, Michael decides to do a funny, and he just suggests that D-Doid wants to kiss Fredbear. Oh, isn't it so cute? Oh, isn't it lovely? Isn't it lovely? Little man lovely. And then when he gets up close to Fredbear and has his head inside Fredbear's jaw, his tears set off the spring locks in the suit, and, well, okay, you can play the soundbite.
Was that the bite of 87?
No, it's not. That's only the bite of 83. We've still got some ground to make up before we get to the funny one. I'm talking about multiple deaths in this section. Following the bite, Fredbear's and the original Freddy's both closed down due to the death of D-Doid and the missing children's incident. William is kicked out of the company, but he's never put away for the murders, as clearly no one can find the bodies and there isn't any concrete evidence that he did it. But also, by the time the next location opens up, one of the reasons why they changed the core animatronics was due to the smell of the suits.
By now, I'm sure you've noticed the older models sitting in the back room. Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now. The idea at first was to repair them. They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology, but they were just so ugly, and the smell.
And not one person thought to maybe check the suits. It sounds like a stupid suggestion, really, but no one thought of it. Not a single. How do they take apart the suits and no one found? What sort of wizardry was William Cook? What was he cooking there, man? In 1987, then, the company decides to open up a new restaurant, being another Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, because the name isn't probably tainted. The animatronics are revamped, adding a new security protocol in the animatronics that's linked to a criminal database to keep the children safe, while the older models sit in the back. However, these newer robots are still made by Afton Robotics, so William's still able to sneak in and use the spring bunny suit to start luring more children. Yet, like, to my understanding, like, he kills another 5. So in, like, I've said the number multiple times in this recording, but 13, and there's never a motive. As a result of William bypassing security protocol, the place is put on lockdown ahead of the final birthday party before the place is inevitably going to be shut down again. The security guard you play as in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is moved over to the day shift to cover, his name being Jeremy Fitzgerald, and Jeremy's frontal lobe here is bitten off clean by one of the animatronics during the sound bite. No one really knows who did the bite of 87. It was like the biggest mystery after the first game and the second, and it just kept being a big mystery in the franchise, and we never got a concrete like culprit. Could have been this guy, or this guy, or this guy, but who really cares? Let's move on. At this point, William has basically decided to neglect his only surviving and eldest child, Michael. Riddled with guilt for the death of his younger brother and wanting to discover his father's secrets, Michael gets a job at Circus Baby's Pizza World, now hidden under the ground, and he got this job under instruction from his father, who told him he'd find his sister there. Technically, William wasn't lying, but due to his new hatred towards Michael, I think it's very likely William only put him there so he'd be killed. Father of the Year. On the final night, all the Funtime animatronics merge together to create Ennard. Look at him, he's weird, and make a plan to escape. This plan is using Michael as a skin suit. You know the Jake suit from Adventure Time? They want to do that, but they're the robot. So they put Michael in the scooping room and just like scoop out his organs and just hop in and take him for a spin, guys. Eventually, because they're dumb and didn't think the plan through, the Funtime animatronics have to leave Michael's body behind because now it has rotted down to this deep purple shade and everyone thinks he's a little weird freaky guy. However, the presence of the Funtime animatronics left behind some remnant in Michael's body. Yay! Physical metal plot armor. And now his soul continues to possess his now rotten corpse, swearing to find his father who lured him to death. Yay. In FNAF 1, the phone guy dies and Michael works there. That's it. That's about all the narrative purpose that Five Nights at Freddy's 1 holds. 30 years after the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 location and the final Freddy's location closed down, a new horror attraction in Fazbear Frights opened its door in current day 2023. Michael again gets a job at this attraction. How is he alive? His corpse should be rotted down to have become a fossil fuel by now. I don't know, don't think about it. Relics from the old Freddy's locations are brought to this horror attraction, like old suits, masks, arcade machines, an old animatronic with a different rotting corpse inside of it. No, yeah, I should probably mention that. So sometime after the FNAF 1 location closed, William makes his way there and begins to disassemble our core cast of guys, and just takes apart the suits where he put the initial 5 missing children. Maybe he's looking to experiment on them, I don't know. However, doing this only frees their souls, and when they scare William, he decides to put the spring bunny suit on again, hoping to scare them enough to leave him alone. However, being in a mustier building than Dream's house, moisture affects the spring lock suits, as we saw with the bite of 83, and the spring bunny suit closes in, skewering William like his name's John Moxley. Now, 30 years later, the Aftons have reunited. Yippee! Yay! And now one of them is as rotten and as horrible on the nose as the other. I don't know if that's a phrase. In an attempt to finish the story, unlike Cody Rhodes, Michael sets Fazbear Frights on fire with William inside, hoping to end things permanently. However, as is key with our boy Willie Afton, play the "he always comes back" sound effect. And then this brings us to Five Nights at Freddy's 6, the final game in the timeline that I'm going to be talking about today, because this video is long enough and I don't want to try and dissect any more lore, thanks. Henry Emily returns to the fold, by now old and senile, like the Joe Biden, and he sets up a new Freddy's location with Michael as his new night guard. Again. However, this place is a trap, meant to lure in the remaining animatronics and release their souls. The animatronics left are Ennard, who is now Molten Freddy, Elizabeth in Baby, who was clearly kicked out of Ennard and somehow found another baby mask. The puppet is here, in a weird specialized Freddy animatronic designed to capture Charlie, and Springtrap, now known as Scrap Trap, who is very clearly William. Again, because he always comes back. At the end of the 5th night, when all the animatronics have been gathered in one place, Henry sets the place ablaze with Michael and himself still inside, finally freeing everyone and ending the story forever with a really kick-ass speech.
And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
And yeah, this is the end of Five Nights at Freddy's. For everyone except William. Yeah, you thought it was Sweet Willie, huh? You see, Golden Freddy, or Fredbear, wasn't just possessed by Dedoid, but also by another child named Cassidy, who is very angry. This kid managed to hold on to so much anger and hatred that even after having the option to free his soul, dude stuck around before he decided to put William's soul in eternal purgatory, forcing him to live through night after night of torturous night guard shifts, the hardest difficulty to the easiest, with every animatronic ever linked to the Fazbear Entertainment name, and even those only kinda sorta maybe linked to the freaking weirdo Pizzeria Simulator game. All of them are here, and they've all got their chance to kill and mentally torment him, and it's just the worst thing ever. And Mr. Hippo gives a really cool talk about rye bread.
Said to him, I said, Orville, I have a story. And he said to me, what's the significance of the story? And I said to him, Orville, not every story has to have significance, you know? Sometimes, sometimes a story is just a story. If you try to read into every little thing and find meaning in everything anyone says, you'll just drive yourself crazy. I had a friend do it once. Wasn't pretty. We talked about it for years.
And that, basically, is Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay, that took significantly longer than I set out for it to be. When I'm recording this now, it's like the 13th of September. I've been working on this video for like a month, and where I am now is like 10 minutes in. But that's, again, me kind of coming and going because I do also work now 2 jobs. So it is kind of a balancing act. I have no idea if this video is going to end up being as good as I'm hoping it is when I'm recording this section. But it is probably the longest video I've ever made. I don't know if it's turning out as good as I want it to, but also if I just get it done at this point, it's good news for me, because it means I might get the confidence to tackle more long projects like this in the future. I don't think it's any secret that I one day want to make a Last of Us 2 video, but I at least want to make sure I have the drive to actually make a longer style video. If you want more long form videos like this and less of my just word vomit, then leave a like, comment down below every time I said the word Freddy or something, I don't know. If you're watching the movie after this, or if you've watched it before, let me know down below. I'm still trying to coax my younger brother to come with me to see it, but somehow I doubt he'll budge. He tends to hate the series even more than I do. And yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I suppose I'll talk to you in a while. Bye.